The turquoise waters of the West Philippine Sea stretched endlessly below the Cessna caravan, a modest Philippine Coast Guard (PCG) aircraft slicing through the humid October air. It was Wednesday, October 15, 2025, and aboard the small plane, callsign Islander, a mix of journalists and PCG officers gripped their seats, notebooks and cameras. Among them was Patrick De Jesus of PTV News, one of the few media outlets invited for this routine yet nerve-wracking mission. A Maritime Domain Awareness (MDA) flight over Bajo de Masinloc, known to the world as Scarborough Shoal. The goal was simple but audacious. Verify the presence of mysterious man-made structures spotted days earlier, amid China's tightening grip on the contested atoll. Just 55 nautical miles from Subic, Zambales, the flight had barely begun when the first crackle pierced the cockpit radio. "This is a People's Liberation Army Navy warship," came the stern Mandarin-accented challenge, repeated in broken English. "You are entering Chinese sovereign airspace. Turn back immediately." The PCG pilot, steady as the propellers humming overhead, responded calmly. "This is the Philippine Coast Guard. We are conducting a lawful patrol in international airspace within our exclusive economic zone." It was a script they'd rehearsed 100 times, rooted in the 2016 arbitral ruling that affirmed the Philippines' rights to the shoal's rich fishing grounds, 124 miles off Luzon, far closer to Manila than Beijing's nearest shores. But words on a radio meant little here. As the Cessna droned closer to the shoal's jagged reefs, the harassment escalated. A Chinese naval helicopter burst from the horizon like an uninvited shadow, its rotors chopping the air as it shadowed the islander from a cautious distance. PTV's footage, shaky but clear, captured the machine's sleek form, likely a Z-9 from a nearby PLA Navy vessel, hovering just out of reach, a silent enforcer. "They're watching us, always watching," De Jesus murmured into his microphone, narrating for the live feed back to Manila. The chopper's crew, visible through binoculars, snapped photos, their lenses trained on the journalists like accusations. The real peril arrived minutes later. As the plane neared the lagoon's entrance, a roar shattered the tension. A J-16 fighter jet from the PLA Air Force streaked in, sleek and predatory. It wasn't a distant escort. This was an intercept. The jet buzzed within 500 meters, then closer still, flying inverted at times, its afterburners a thunderous warning. For over 20 minutes, it tailed the Cessna, dipping to 200 feet above the smaller craft in maneuvers that defied aviation norms. "It's very dangerous," De Jesus reported later, his voice laced with the adrenaline of survival. "This should not be conducted toward a Coast Guard aircraft. We have no ill intent. We're patrolling our sovereignty, and this airspace belongs to the Filipino people." On the ground, or rather on the waves below, the shoal told its own story of quiet defiance and lingering mystery. Satellite imagery from earlier MDA flights, corroborated by the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative (AMTI), had first flagged debris in the southeast sector, twisted metal and buoys, possibly remnants of a structure dating back to 2023. At Asia MTI today, the journalists peered through the haze. No floating barriers blocked the lagoon's mouth, those temporary blockades China deploys when Filipino fishing boats venture too close. At Now You Know, instead, two buoys bobbed ominously, one inside the lagoon, another to the north outside the shoal. "It's hard to say who placed them," a PCG officer admitted on tape, echoing the transcript's uncertainty. "Chinese? American? Us? But they're not new. We've confirmed that much." Initial probes suggested the debris predated recent tensions, but verification flights would continue, assuming the skies stayed clear. This wasn't the first such aerial tango. Just 2 days prior, on October 13th, PTV had documented a similar tailing by a Chinese helicopter during another MDA run, with the craft maintaining a wary distance but never breaking off. At PTV 8th, and the pattern stretched back months. In August, a J-16 had shadowed a PCG plane for 20 minutes, dipping perilously low after a bizarre collision between two Chinese vessels near the shoal, Beijing's own ships ramming each other while chasing a Philippine resupply mission. Inquirer.net. Earlier in February, a Z-9 helicopter had buzzed within a mere 3 meters of a fisheries plane, snapping photos of stunned journalists aboard. benarnews.org. Manila's Coast Guard spokesman, Commodore J. Tariella, had called it reckless, a clear violation of ICKO safety standards that endangered lives for the sake of a rejected 9-line claim. Reuters.com. Beijing predictably spun it differently. State media framed the intercepts as necessary warnings against illegal intrusions into Huangyandao, its name for the shoal, insisting the flights violated sovereignty. SCMP.com. But the optics were damning. Ex-posts from observers like No Thanks Frankie captured the jet's aggressive loops in real time, fueling outrage among Filipino netizens and allies. At No Thanks Frankie, hypocrisy at 30,000 feet, one user quipped, referencing China's own poaching of giant clams from Philippine outposts just weeks earlier. Mindoc 18. The US, ever the distant backstop, had deployed warships like the USS Higgins for freedom of navigation ops nearby in August, drawing Beijing's ire but underscoring Manila's bolstered position. Courant.com. As the islander banked away, the J-16 finally peeled off, vanishing into the clouds like a bad dream. Below, the BRP Teresa Magbanua patrolled the shoal's vicinity, ferrying supplies to stranded Filipino fishermen, those hardy souls who refused to yield their ancestral waters. De Jesus signed off his report from the West Philippine Sea for Pambansang TV, sa Bagong Pilipinas. The plane touched down in Subic hours later, but the echo of engines lingered. In the shoal's contested embrace, every flight was a statement, every shadow a reminder. Sovereignty isn't granted, it's flown, mile by perilous mile. In the West Philippine Sea, courage isn't measured by firepower, but by presence. Every flight, every patrol, every voice that tells the story keeps the truth alive. From Bajo de Masinloc to every shore that bears the flag. This has been Zamboanga Times, bringing you the stories that matter. Stay informed, stay aware, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more verified reports that keep you closer to the truth.